So what's good, TMG fam? It's your boy Ellen. I'm back with another reaction. How y'all feel? Welcome back to the channel. Salute. Now, it's time for some more conspiracy theories and unexplained mysteries, fam. This type of stuff that I live for, bro. I don't know what it is, man. I just can't help myself and I can't get enough of it. And plus, now it's the topic of discussion. Everybody's getting on the wave now. Like I said, you see people in the grocery store, they want to talk about it while you're in line, checking out your food, my barber, like everybody's wanting to talk about it now. And I'm loving it. I'm loving it. So we're going to get into the next video, man. If you're new, you know what to do. Hit that subscribe button, join the family, man. And let's run them likes up, man. Hit that like button and get ready to get into it. Here we go.
Going back to ancient times, the famous Greek philosopher Aristotle was once regarded as the most brilliant man on the planet. But one of his famous assertions about cosmology was proven false by a scientist with humble beginnings, Galileo. As always, history has a habit of repeating itself. Galileo's theories were proven wrong by Newton, whose laws were proven wrong by Einstein. And now, funny enough, Einstein's have been proven wrong by this year's physics Nobel laureates. The universe has a funny way to humble even the most genius minds, and we need to question everything, even if it is to accept something that we may have dismissed earlier. Growing up,
I heard that, right? It's okay to question. Don't feel bad about your questions. I just wanted to stress that to people because I feel as though there's a lot of people who have questions, but they fear how other people will perceive them or think about them. Man, don't even worry about that. Don't even care about that, bro. Don't. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter what it is. Somebody gonna judge you for it. The smallest thing to the biggest. It doesn't matter, fam. Have your question. You see me, I just put it out there, bro, and you feel how you feel about me. But I know it's a lot of people that's just afraid and don't want to be perceived a certain way.
it is to accept something that we may have dismissed earlier. Growing up, we used to believe stories about the legendary Santa Claus, the bringer of Christmas presents. But then, we grew up. We realized that the man we all once adored was only a myth. We believed we knew this man, but we were wrong. Today,
Used to make us get into bed all early, talking about he not gonna come until you go to sleep. Then you can't go to sleep, and then when you wake up the next day, you stayed up so late that you're too tired to play with the stuff. So man, sorry, took you back through my childhood.
only a myth. We believed we knew this man, but we were wrong. Today, the scientific community rejects the existence of an island named Atlantis, a civilization that was ahead of its time. But two scholars, Graham Hancock and Randall Carlson, claim to have proof that once it did exist. If their claims have substance, they can change the history of mankind and how we see the universe. Hello there, and welcome back to Factnominal. Today, we'll find out if the nation of Atlantis was just a fable, a story to be passed on, or if it was something more tangible.
Whoa. Talk about throwback. Look at how that came on, man. I love old movies just to see how far we've came. You ever do that? Go back and watch old movies to see how far we've come as far as like special effects and CGI and different things like that. Oh, man.
Be passed on, or if it was something more tangible.
Look at this. Oh, man.
The mystery of a mother empire which stretched her civilization to both sides of the Atlantic has been the fascinating subject of thousands of books and millions of words of controversy by science, literature, and even today's headlines. Suddenly, you are living thousands of years ago in a civilization even more advanced scientifically than our own.
More than just mythology? Atlantis, the legendary island that sank beneath the waves in the distant past, taking down with it an advanced civilization. Will we ever find it? Or more importantly, did it even exist? In a podcast with famous podcaster Joe Rogan, two scholars, Randall Carlson and Graham Hancock, suggest that the legendary place did actually exist, and hinted that the proof lay in the date provided by Plato. Graham mentioned Plato's date of 9600 BC, which is about 11,600 years ago. That might not seem like much, but it coincides with the end of the Younger Dryas period, which began with a mysterious rise in sea level, mass extinction of animal species that also matches the time period where global temperature shoots up and the last of the ice caps collapses into the sea, causing an enormous rise in sea level.
It's an incredibly important day because the Younger Dryas begins 12,800 years ago with a cataclysm, with a puzzling, mysterious rise in sea level at the same point, 1,000 years of freezing temperatures, mass extinctions of animal species all over the world, and then 11,600 years ago, global temperature shoots up, the last of the ice caps collapse into the sea level rises enormously. That is the date that work starts at Göbekli Tepe, and it's a point I've made many times, but it's really worth making because archaeologists roll their eyes every time you say the word Atlantis.
Now, according to the scholar, this was precisely...
That's interesting, though. He makes sense because that's the way they're talking about things now. Like, they're talking about the temperatures rising, the ice melting, and the water levels rising. We talked about that a while back because we were talking about people living on the coast and how we may have to push in. And I was like, oh man, I don't know about moving closer to Yellowstone. That's one of my biggest fears here in the States. Biggest fears is Yellowstone. So I was talking about that then, and we were saying, and he just made it to where the timelines, it lines up. So that, and I bet if he can find maybe a volcano that erupted around that time, I think he'll have every piece to the puzzle he needs to prove that, except Atlantis. That'd be the only piece to the puzzle he needs, but everything else will line up. If he can find a volcanic eruption that happened during that time, yeah, I think it'll be concrete at that point, almost probably 75% true at that point.
It's a point I've made many times, but it's really worth making because archaeologists roll their eyes every time you say the word Atlantis.
Now, according to the scholar,
Why
this
is
was
that?
precisely the date that Plato, which is the major reference to Atlantis, gives for the total destruction of Atlantis. The scholar pointed out that Plato's ancestor Solon visited the Egyptian priests to learn from them, because Athens had apparently lost an important record of their past, thanks to a flood that swept the entire civilization. However, the Egyptians had this record stored within their archives. And if you could recall, this coincided with the end of the Younger Dryas, which marks the beginning of what scientists call Meltwater Pulse 1b, one of the biggest overnight sea rises in history. Plato in his description made quite a detailed explanation of what the ancient nation may have looked like.
Would that look like, y'all? The eye of the Sahara, right? Exactly. I knew y'all with me. That exactly, and we got that same aerial view we've been seeing in the videos. Just looks a little better here.
Pulse 1b, one of the biggest overnight sea rises in history. Plato in his description made quite a detailed explanation of what the ancient nation may have looked like, and NASA's satellite images of a few places on Earth do fit his description. According to Graham and Randall's reference to Plato, Atlantis was made of alternating zones of sea and land, larger and smaller, and circling one another. There were 2 of land and 3 of water, which he turned as with a lathe out of the center of the island, equidistant every way. Satellite images prove Atlantis' existence? The first hint is the eye of the Sahara, because if water had existed...
Man, my teachers would be so proud of me. We recognize, we know, we on it, y'all. I'm telling y'all, bro. We becoming little scholars of our own.
The first hint is the eye of the Sahara, because if water had existed in the eye of the Sahara, there would have been 3 rings of water and 2 rings of land, as Plato stated.
Yep.
The second indication, as hinted by the 2 scholars, was in reference to Plato's text. The mountains of the island of Atlantis were celebrated for their size and beauty, and the surrounding mountains of the city flow with rivers. This part of the island looked toward the south and was sheltered from the north. It just so happens that the Eye of Sahara is encircled by a chain of mountains on the north side, and satellite imagery shows traces of many ancient rivers on the sides of these mountains. There are many other clues that point out that the Eye of the Sahara could well be the legendary Atlantis. For example, Plato also said that the city had elephants in great numbers, and archaeologists have found many skeletal remains of elephants in the area. And there are also rock art depictions of elephants there. Could this just be a coincidence, or was Plato's description of a fallen nation more than just a myth? Could it be? One scientist suggested that since ancient times, humans tend to settle close to water. And because we require water to survive, this has always attracted many people, even though watery areas do come with a level of uncertainty. When compared to dry climates, waterways are always volatile. Natural erosion changes the ground over time, but catastrophic cases such as flooding or earthquakes allow water to move more violently. And there is no doubt that human history is filled with calamities that may not have wiped out generations but did cause significant damage. These events, passed down through generations and repeated through oral histories, have a tendency of becoming larger than life. So it could be that in the ancient world there was little distinction between the concepts of fiction and non-fiction with regard to storytelling, given that they viewed their own existence as part of a larger, what we might call fantasy narrative about the universe itself. With that in mind, they would not have placed a high priority on clearly stating what was totally real and what was totally unreal. Atlantis could have been a real city in accordance with the theory described, but Plato might have adopted that truth for the purpose of crafting a story that would be, in his eyes, even more true than some mundane fact like Atlantis actually exists. The ancient Greeks may not have cared as much about the distinctions we cling to in the modern world, and scientists might have been too quick to dismiss it, especially when NASA's satellite images of certain places on Earth seem to tick the box. Unlike many legends whose origins have been lost in the mists of time, we know exactly when and where the story of Atlantis first appeared. The story was first told in two of Plato's dialogues, the Timaeus and the Critias, written about 360 BC. But according to Ken Feder, a professor of archaeology, in his book, The Encyclopedia of Dubious Archaeology, he hints that the ancient philosopher's description isn't as straightforward as we think. He suggested that Atlantis might not be as honorable as everyone believes, and
But why would it be, or why would we expect it to be that? You know what I mean? I wouldn't expect it to be that's like finding it, and we expecting it to be the exact same way that it was before the flood, before the big tsunami hit it or whatever took place. Like, so why do we expect it to be straightforward and exactly alike? I don't understand that.
he hints that the ancient philosopher's description isn't as straightforward as we think. He suggested that Atlantis might not be as honorable as everyone believes, and it isn't the perfect society, but is rather contrary, because according to him, Atlantis is simply the embodiment of a materially wealthy, technologically advanced, and militarily powerful nation that became corrupted by its wealth, sophistication, and might. The cool part is that Ken isn't the only one who thinks like that either. Many scientists today assume that the Atlantis description given by Plato is more about the city's heroic rival Athens than a sunken civilization. So if Atlantis really existed today and was found intact and inhabited, its residents would probably try to either eliminate or imprison us all. However, in our conclusion, Plato might have done to Atlantis what Homer did with Troy a few hundred years earlier, where he based his story of Atlantis on a real setting and a prehistoric civilization known to ancient Greeks, one that Plato decided to use to best communicate his philosophical story. But what do you think about the whole thing? Do you think this nation once existed, or do you feel it was simply a story crafted for the purpose of passing a piece of moral advice? Tell us in the comments section below. Thanks for watching Factnominal.
I don't think our job is to say, okay, this was real or this wasn't real. I think our job is to go there and just continue to research and continue to find and piece together clues and discover what we need to discover. You know what I'm saying? Like, continuing on. I feel like when they throw out counterclaims about, his stuff wasn't straightforward, then no, this couldn't have been possible. You halt progress. If there is an Atlantis, we need to continue to research as much as we possibly can and dig and look and investigate and try to find, and you know what I'm saying? Because we're saying it was taken over by a huge flood or tsunami after an earthquake or something like that. So it could be spread throughout. It couldn't have remained intact. We don't know. We don't know. But what we do know is We've looked at the Eye of Sahara. It looks similar to the stories that we've heard about Atlantis. Just talked about the animals that were present there. A lot of elephants. They've been finding a lot of fossils of elephants and different things. Plus the wall art they discovered. You know what I mean? So what do? We just disregard all this stuff that we're finding? That don't make sense to me, to just disregard the things that we're finding because it just doesn't completely line up with what he said. No. I don't think we progress forward that way. You know, we keep looking, and then eventually either we find it or everything else, and we find something that alternates the story a little bit or changes what we thought this was to this is what it actually was. It's the same thing we've been doing throughout history. Remember, they said Einstein, now his stuff is being holes are being poked through his theories. And a lot of his stuff could possibly be proven wrong. It's what we do. So, but that's my little rant. Y'all, that's my rant, man. Y'all hit that like button, man. Let's get the likes up to as much as possible, bro. And y'all get at me in the comment section. Let me know what you thought of this conspiracy theory. All right? Atlantis is always going to be, in my opinion, sought after and most talked about conspiracy theory. Y'all get at me and let me know what you think. Stick around and stay tuned until next one I'm gone. Peace.